All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, guys. So first off, thanks for signing up for today. We got some cool stuff planned, so I'm really excited to share with you our question and what we're gonna learn today. But I think for those of you guys that have already been to summer science, usually what we do is we talk about our question, the answer, and then we move on to an experiment. We're actually going to flip this around today. We're going to start with our experiment, and we're going to then do our presentation because this experiment's going to take a little bit of time. But I think you guys are still going to like it nonetheless, okay? So what I'm going to do to start is I want to show you. So last night I made Jell-O, okay? And hopefully you guys have all eaten Jell-O before. Yeah, like the weirdly jiggly kind of, I don't know, some people eat it for dessert. So Jell-O, guys. I made Jell-O last night. This is fresh Jell-O. It's blue. It's blue raspberry flavored. Okay, just normal Jell-O. Nothing special about that. And then what I also have today, guys, is I have some pineapple. Okay, and this is normal pineapple, guys. Just fresh pineapple. And what we're gonna do is I have 2 glasses. I'm gonna try to back this up so you guys can see a little bit better. So I have 2 glasses here. Okay, normal glasses. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each glass 1 scoop of Jell-O. Okay, 1 little melon ball of Jell-O, which would be like a little round ball. So in each glass, I'm going to put 1 scoop of Jell-O. So here's my Jell-O, guys, and then we're going to go ahead and do that. So let's use this size here. So okay, here's 1. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to do 2 scoops of Jell-O just because they're kind of small. All right, so we'll do 2 scoops of Jell-O. So I'm like trying to scoop it and get a good scoop here. 2. Okay, so 2 little scoops of Jell-O. And you guys can see in there, I have 2 scoops of Jell-O. I don't want my big fingers to get in the way. 2 scoops of Jell-O, okay, in the first jar. And then same with the second one. I keep them really equal. No difference. So here's 1, and 2. And 2. Okay. And 2 scoops of Jell-O, guys. 2 scoops of Jell-O in each. They look about the same. So now what we're going to do, this is a little bit weird, is in one, we're going to end up putting pineapple on top of the Jell-O, and the other one, we're not going to do anything. So here's my fresh pineapple, guys. In this jar, I'm going to put my pineapple on top of the Jell-O. So I'm going to just lay it in there. I got a couple of pieces just to make sure we can really cover the Jell-O with pineapple. So here we go. I'm going to put that pineapple, and you guys can see the pineapple is inside of my Jell-O right now. Just put it right on top, okay? So you guys can see that, okay? And other jar, guys, there's nothing on top of my Jell-O. It's just plain old Jell-O, okay? So I'm starting with this because, sorry, I'm just trying to rearrange it so I can really cover my Jell-O with pineapple. We're starting with this. We're just going to let it sit for a little bit, and we're going to kind of see what happens once we're done with talking about our experiment. You're going to understand now why this is working and why this is not working in a little bit. So I'm just kind of, sorry, I'm just trying to like TP my pineapple on my Jell-O. I'm going to set these aside, and we'll work with them later. So I'm going to put them over, I'll put them over here. Okay. So we'll get to that later. So now we're actually going to get to the fun part and kind of understanding what's going on. So I'm going to switch screens. You guys are going to see my my presentation, and we'll kind of talk about our question this week. So sure. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to put on my headset just so you guys can hear me better. So, so for this week, guys, I got a question, and maybe this was your question, but someone asked, why is it better for some foods to stay fresh by being in your counter, others by staying in the refrigerator, and other food in the freezer? Okay, it's a really good question because a lot of times we just kind of blindly refrigerate things. We don't really know why. We're just like, oh, if it's a frozen pizza, we put it in the freezer. There's certain things that we just kind of do, but we kind of want to understand what the process is and why we're even doing it in the first place. And there's a lot of food safety stuff that we're talking about today, okay? So I'm going to present, and then we'll get started. Sorry, I'm arranging my Jell-O here, so I'm trying to make sure that the pineapple really gets in there. So first thing, we're going to talk about this. What are cells, okay? And maybe you've heard the word cells thrown around before in different kind of contexts. Basically, a cell is the smallest unit of a living thing. Think about that for a minute. So remember we were talking about atoms a couple weeks ago, how atoms of chemical elements, that's like the smallest unit of anything in the world is an atom. Well, when we're talking about life, right, living things like plants, animals, humans, and anything that's living, the smallest unit that they can be is a cell. Okay? That's kind of when we break it down to the smallest unit, it's called a cell. The human body, guys, has trillions of cells, okay? So trillions of these the smallest building block living things, trillions of them. Plants have cells, animals, dogs, everything has cells. Actually, dogs are animals. But this is actually a cool picture because this is what your skin would look like. So imagine your skin, if you were to zoom in really close to it, you'd see like this layer of cells, and there's tons and tons of cells. There's two different kinds of cells, okay? There's animal and plant cells, and then there's bacterial cells, okay? So this is what we call a eukaryotic cell. You don't need to know the name, but this is a plant cell or an animal cell. So this is if we were to break down a plant to its smallest unit, this is the kind of cell you'd find. If you were to break down a bacteria to its smallest unit, you would find this type of cell. That's a bacterial cell. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what are bacteria, okay? And I'm sure you've heard of bacterial infections. Perhaps you've gotten sick from bacteria. I'm sure everyone has have some experience with bacteria, and it makes sense because bacteria are everywhere, okay? They're in the air, they're in the soil, they're on your fingers right now, they're like on the table that you're sitting at. Bacteria is everywhere, and that's okay. We're going to talk about why it's okay. So bacteria are single-celled organisms, which means that bacteria, even though we are like a multicellular, guys, we have like trillions of cells, trillions of those little cells in our body. Bacteria are only one cell, okay? They're a little bit different than an animal cell, so they really don't have the same kind of cells that we do. Bacterial cells are different. They have DNA, so DNA is basically like kind of like a building block. It tells that cell how to function. It tells it kind of what to do. It tells the bacteria, do this now, do this then. It's like a control center. So it has this DNA, and the DNA is called a nucleoid. It's kind of like coiled up. And then also too, so I don't want to confuse anybody. Just keep it really simple. Just remember that bacterial cell, guys, it's one cell. It's different from an animal cell. It's the most important thing you need to remember. And then another thing too is bacterial cells have these things called ribosomes. And maybe you've heard of that word before, but basically what the ribosomes do is they use the bacterial DNA. Remember, the bacterial DNA is kind of like a roadmap. It's kind of like a control center. It's like, do this, it gives out instructions. You can think of it well. And basically what that ribosome does is it takes that DNA and it'll follow the instructions to make bacterial proteins, okay? And you don't need to know what bacterial proteins do yet, but just know that basically the ribosomes in the bacteria, they take this DNA, they work with it, and they produce bacterial proteins. And an example of a bacterial protein is a bacterial protein that would push out antibiotics, okay? So you guys know antibiotics try to kill bacteria. So what the bacteria is going to do, it's going to be like, I want to fight back. I don't want this antibiotic. It's going to kill me, right? It's going to fight back, and it's going to make a protein that'll push out the antibiotic. Okay, so that's just something cool to think about. Basically, bacterial cells do make proteins, so they are functioning. Kind of cool. So thinking about the size of bacteria, guys, we're talking about, I said they're microscopic. So bacteria are about 1/1,000,000th of a meter large. Now think about this. A guitar, an acoustic guitar, maybe you have a guitar, that's about 1 meter in length. Imagine slicing that up into 1,000,000 pieces. That is about how small bacteria is going to be. So just for reference, guys, it's crazy. It's super duper tiny. Super duper tiny. I mean, 1,000,000 pieces, that's a lot. That's really small. Bacteria, they come in different shapes, okay? Some bacteria have this circular shape. It's like really round. That's called a Cocci bacteria. It's C-O-C-C-I, Cocci. Then we also have bacteria that kind of looks like a capsule, almost like an Advil tablet or like some sort of medication. And the capsule-shaped bacteria, that's called bacilli. And then we also have spiral shape. You guys see how it looks like kind of like a pasta noodle. spiral shaped bacteria is called spirilla bacteria. So there's different types of shapes of bacteria. They come in all different kinds of shapes, but they all have these basic parts, guys. They all have DNA and they all have ribosomes to help them make proteins that they'll use to kind of fight off invaders or anything like that. And then bacteria, when we're talking about bacteria, we're not ever really talking about one singular bacteria because that wouldn't be enough to make somebody sick. That wouldn't be enough to even make a difference, really. Bacteria there's usually tons and tons of them. And really how bacteria multiply, it's through a process, it's called binary fission. Okay, big word, we don't need to really get into it. But basically what happens is the bacteria will kind of make a copy of its DNA. Remember we said DNA is like the roadmap for bacteria. It tells it what it's going to do today. It's like almost like an agenda or like instructions for if you're making a cake or something. It's like instructions for bacteria. So basically what the bacteria will do is it'll make a copy of its instructions and then it ends up splitting into two. And that's how it copies. And each half of the bacteria will get a copy of that DNA of those instructions. It just keeps on splitting like that. It kind of comes together and then it breaks off, but each little piece will get a copy of the DNA because it replicates it beforehand. So kind of cool to think about that. Just basically it's making, you have one bacterial cell, it doubles its DNA, it doubles its instructions, and then it splits so it can give the other half or other new, I guess, bacteria a copy of the instructions so it knows how to function. Okay, so that was kind of I feel like the hardest part probably of this lesson is just kind of understanding what bacteria are. But now we're going to talk about really how they grow. So when we're talking about it, technically they grow through binary fission. It's binary fission is the process where they make a copy of their DNA and then they split so that each copy has an instructions, one, and then they split into two. It's almost like they kind of pinch off. You can kind of think of it, I'm trying to think of a good example. Just something like if you were to take something, pinch it, and then split it. Exactly what bacteria do to replicate. So even though they grow through this process, binary fission, there's actually a lot more going on. Bacteria are everywhere, guys. I really tried to emphasize this at the beginning, but there is bacteria everywhere. It's in the air, it's in our water, it's in our food, it's in everything. Everything has some traces of bacteria. And just like all living things, guys, we're a living thing. What do we need to grow? We need food, we need water, we need a suitable living temperature, right? We can't live in negative 20-degree weather with no jacket on, right? It's not going to work. We need to have a suitable body temperature, a suitable environment to live. And bacteria are no different, guys. They need the same things that we do. So bacteria, if they want to grow, if they want to actually live, they need food source, they need water, and they also, too, they need a suitable living temperature, a good temperature to grow, good temperature to live. And for bacteria, that tends to be a warmer temperature. It helps them speed up kind of how fast they grow, how fast they go through that binary fission, that splitting and growing. So they like the warm temperatures, they like moisture, and they like food. So thinking about this, guys, if you increase any one of these, so if you increase the amount of food that you give bacteria, you increase the amount of water, or if you increase the temperature you give bacteria, guess what's going to happen? More bacteria are going to grow. On the other hand, right, if you got rid of one of these things, bacteria aren't going to really grow, right? They're going to struggle to grow. So if you made the temperature colder on them, they're not going to grow as much. So these are kind of like the three things that the biggest takeaways I want you guys to get is that bacteria needs food, water, and suitable living temperature, which is like a warm temperature. That's what they need to live and survive. So we're going to kind of talk about how we play around with those different factors to keep our food safe. So why do bacteria grow on food? Why do they grow in food? We're going to kind of talk about this. So first off, guys, bacteria is not all bad. And we're going to talk about some good bacteria too. But bacteria likes food because guess what, guys? What's one of the first things that bacteria needs to grow? Food. They love food. So bacteria naturally are going to grow on food just because it's a food source for them. It's something that they can eat. That's just like you were to go to a restaurant, guys. Why we go to restaurants? Well, we go there to eat. You don't go to a Petco to eat. You go to a restaurant to eat. That's the food we need. Bacteria, guys, they like our food. They like consuming real food products like the ones that we eat. So there's lots of bacteria in food. Food is one of the boxes they need. But another thing that bacteria needs, guys, is moisture. And moisture is just water. And the interesting part is that raw chicken and raw fish, and this is a picture of raw chicken, they are usually really wet, okay? If you've ever held a piece of raw chicken or you've seen a piece, or maybe your parents were cutting it up, you know that it's really wet, okay? And the bacteria like it because guess what they want to grow? They need water. So a chicken breast is gonna have a lot of water, and it's gonna be really easy for them to grow on because one of the things they need to grow is water, okay? So another thing, guys, is warm temperatures are also great for bacteria. I was kind of talking about that, how they really thrive in those humid and warm climates. So this is why you can't leave, if you cut up an apple and you leave it out on your counter overnight, it's a bad idea. And the reason why is because as that apple is warming up, more bacteria are going to grow on it. It just does warm environments, okay? So it's kind of cool to think about that. And another thing, guys, too, is that not all bacteria are bad. And I really want to emphasize this. It's really important to understand. Not all bacteria are bad. So in yogurt, if you guys eat yogurt, yogurt is actually made up of milk and bacteria. It's fermented milk. So it's milk that has been left to sit out. It's left to grow that bacteria. Usually leave it in like a warm environment so that it'll grow more bacteria. The type of bacteria it grows is actually good. It's good for our gut health. It's perfect. It really is helpful bacteria, and it isn't going to make us sick. So this bacteria that you find in yogurt, if you were to break down yogurt, you actually see all these little bacteria. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of cool too. It's actually not bad for us at all. So not bad bacteria. Now, there is bad bacteria though, if you think about E. coli, and you've probably heard E. coli thrown around all the time. But E. coli is a bacteria that usually comes from fecal matter. So it's usually accidental, but someone maybe will touch some sort of animal feces or whatever, and they end up with traces of it on their hands, and then they touch your food. And guess what? E. coli likes to grow in warm environments and wet environments, and on food. Remember, warm, wet, and on food. So that's the problem with chicken a lot of times, sorry. That's the problem with chicken a lot of times when you leave chicken out. The reason we have to cook chicken is because just in case it somehow got the E. coli bacteria, if you leave it out and you leave it warm and you eat it raw, guys, it's not going to be full of bacteria just because the warm environment and the wetness of the chicken is going to help with that too, for growing E. coli. And this type of bacteria is bad. It's going to make people sick. Okay, so this is kind of getting to the meat of the question that was asked. It was, well, okay, why do we refrigerate some foods and we can leave other foods out? So thinking about refrigeration is a cooling process, okay? So basically those cold temperatures, they knock off one of the things that bacteria wants to grow. Bacteria wants to grow in warm temperatures. That's where it thrives. So if you make it colder, guys, you're going to slow how much bacteria is going to grow. They're just going to not want to grow there. They're going to choose something else to grow on. So if you make it colder, guys, cold temperatures are kind of going to take off one of the things bacteria wants. Another thing about refrigeration nowadays that's kind of cool is we have a lot of moisture control systems. Maybe your fridge has that too. But what moisture control does is it kind of sucks out some of the moisture in the environment of the refrigerator and sucks out the moisture from the products. And remember, guys, what do bacteria like to grow? They like water. So if you make something less moist, if you make it less watery, you're not going to get as much bacteria. So refrigeration is really helpful because it makes things colder and it also takes away some of that moisture. So we're kind of checking off two of those things that bacteria likes to grow. If you get rid of them, we're not going to get as much bacteria growth, which is kind of natural. Refrigeration is used really for cut fruit and for meats. And the reason why, when you think about this, is that if you have a meat, it's really wet, and if you leave it out, it's going to get warm. But when you put it in the refrigerator, kind of taking out some of that moisture with our moisture control system, and you're also making it colder. And same with cut fruit. If you have cut fruit that's open, the moisture is exposed to the environment. But when you put it in the fridge, you're cooling it down, less bacteria, and you're removing moisture, less bacteria. Now, here's the thing though, right? You might be thinking, okay, why can beans and raisins and, fruit with peels on it, why can that sit out? Or kind bars, why can those sorts of things sit out? And the reason is they don't have high moisture content. Beans, there isn't that much moisture in them, or they're locked in a can that prevents them from being exposed to bacteria and being exposed to that moisture. Uncut fruit, so this is like whole fruit, guys, it has the protection of the peel. And that peel is going to kind of protect it from bacteria getting in, because bacteria is going to want to get into that moist, great food source in the middle that we all like to eat, but we don't let it because we put that peel on it to stop that bacteria. Same with like a Kind bar, or if you have like almonds or nuts, you know, you can usually leave those out on your counter and nothing's going to happen to them. And the reason is because they have, they're dry. So bacteria, A, aren't really attracted to them because they're dry. Bacteria like moist environments. And B, they usually have the protection of some sort of bag or some sort of a skin or something like that to protect us. But typically bacteria won't grow on them because they're just too dry. Besides refrigeration stopping bacteria growth, it also does a couple of other things. It also helps to slow down the speed at which food rots, okay? And this is a picture of a rotting apple. And here's the deal, guys. Rotting is not caused by bacteria. That's one of the biggest misconceptions that people have, is that, oh, you know, if a food has bacteria on it, it's gonna rot. Not true. All foods rot, guys. It's just natural. It's a process of life. They're gonna rot. They're gonna grow, and then they're gonna start to rot. And you can't stop that because it's not a bacteria caused thing. The only thing we can do is we can kind of slow it down with refrigeration. Refrigeration can help to freeze how fast a fruit or vegetable or anything really is going to rot. So that's kind of can become helpful to think about. So it's good at doing that and helping to prevent certain foods from rotting. Okay, here's another one, guys. This is a second part of the question is, okay, now why do we freeze some foods and refrigerate other foods, right? It just doesn't seem to make sense. But there's an answer to this. So freezing foods, guys, is extreme cool, right? It's super duper chilly. Like it's way chillier than our refrigerator. So when you're freezing, guys, it's much colder temperatures than we would encounter. And it's good to freeze foods that we want to store for a really long time, okay? So example is like raspberries. If I were to refrigerate raspberries and I were to eat them like a year later, well, guess what? Even though refrigerator is cold, bacteria is still going to be able to grow. It's not going to stop it completely. You're still going to have problems with it. Bacteria is going to grow. Rotting is going to happen. You might also get mold too, but mold is a little bit different from bacteria. But you may also get mold if you just leave it in the refrigerator for a year. But now, if we were to freeze it, guys, it's like extreme cold. So the rotting process is like going to stop. It's not going to rot at all because it's like frozen in time. So we're not going to have rotting. We don't really have to worry about bacteria either. And you're probably not going to get mold either. And mold is just, mold is actually not a bacteria. That's why I didn't really want to talk about it too much. But mold is not bacteria. Mold is a fungi. So technically, it's kind of closer to us than it is to bacteria. But mold can still grow in warm environments. It kind of functions the same as bacteria. It likes food, it likes water, and it likes warm environments. So when we're talking about bacteria, we can also bring in mold too. But basically, guys, freezing foods is effective if you want to store something for a really long time because it prevents rotting, bacteria, and mold. It's a better way to do it. And you can think about like frozen foods here, like chicken and frozen chicken and frozen berries and things like that. And a lot of times, I'm sure if you guys have a freezer, you probably freeze chicken that you're going to use really far down in the future. But you might put just normal chicken, like jewel chicken that you're going to use tonight for dinner. You'll put it in your refrigerator. And the reason, guys, is that you know, it's okay to use it immediately because it's not going to get bacteria. It's not going to rot. No mold if you leave it in the fridge for a little bit. But if we want to use it farther down the line, we need to really make it cold so we can no bacteria at all. No mold or whatever sorts of things can grow on it. We don't want that. So that's why we make it super cold. Okay. So I always like kind of leaving you guys with something to think about, to discuss with your family, your friends. Because it's always good to be thinking about this stuff. And you hear stuff, you maybe pick up on something that you really liked, and I want you to discuss it. So my question for you guys, and this question does have an answer. So if you do want to email me, feel free to email me. Your parents all have my email. Send me an email with your answer, and I'll kind of tell you if you're right or wrong or how close you are. But why do freeze-dried products, okay, not require refrigeration? So freeze-dried products are banana chips, apple chips, strawberry chips, those little like things that are kind of crunchy. They're like crunchy, they're almost like a chip. Those are called freeze-dried products. Why do those not require refrigeration? Think about what they're missing that bacteria would like that prevents bacteria from growing on them. Kind of think about it, okay? And feel free to email me that answer. So that's all I have for you guys in terms of our answering our question today. And now we're going to go back to our experiment, kind of see what's going on, okay? So it's been sitting for a while now, and we're going to kind of check out what's going on. So here we go. So first off, guys, this is the Jell-O. Sorry, I'm trying to rearrange my cups here. Yeah. All right. So this is what our Jell-O is going to look like with no pineapple in it, okay? Or actually, do you want to start with no pineapple or pineapple? I'm going to start with the pineapple Jello. I think it's more fun. So this is what our Jello is going to look like with pineapple in it. Okay, I'm going to pour it on my plate just so you guys can see it here. So I'm going to tilt my screen. So here's the pineapple Jello. See it? It's completely liquid. It's completely liquid. Now, let's look at what our Jello looks like with no pineapple in it. Okay. So now it's going to run. But what I want you guys to see here is this. This is my no pineapple Jello. This still has chunks in it. Here's a chunk. I can actually pick it up. I don't want to get my fingers so sticky. It does have chunks. Whereas this one is totally melted, the pineapple Jello. Completely melted. It's a liquid. You can actually drink this if you want. I'm not going to. But the one with the pineapple is all melted, and the one without pineapple there's a chunk that I got from the no pineapple Jello. So this one is still kind of chunky, and this one is totally liquid. So kind of chunky. Here's some of the chunks. I'm going to push them out so you guys can see. So without the pineapple, we get still some Jello chunks. But with the pineapple, it's completely liquid. Okay. So what actually this has to do with is bacteria. So it's proof of bacteria in the pineapple. So bacteria is everywhere, and I told you guys this. Bacteria is everywhere. Now, there is bacteria in pineapple, okay? And what that bacteria does, remember how I was talking about how bacteria can produce proteins, and we didn't really need to get too far into that. But basically, pineapple bacteria, hold on, a piece of pineapple for reference, pineapple bacteria makes a protein called bromelain, okay? Bromelain, just a protein that basically that bacteria makes. Now, bromelain, what it does is when it comes in contact with Jello, which Jello is made up of gelatin, and gelatin is another protein, it ends up destroying it. It destroys its structure. So when I put the pineapple in my Jello I just put the pineapple in the Jello, the bromelain from the pineapple, remember that, guys, that's the bacteria kind of protein. The bacteria in the pineapple produces the protein bromelain. When the bromelain touches my Jello, the gelatin breaks apart. Now, in the Jello with no pineapple, guys, there's no bromelain. So nothing's going to break the gelatin apart. The gelatin's going to be totally fine. It's going to chill out. It's going to still stay kind of jiggly. But with the pineapple, guys, it's proof that there is bacteria everywhere. That's the point of this experiment. I'm proving to you guys there is bacteria everywhere. There's bacteria in pineapple, and you don't even see it. Because the bacteria in the pineapple is what's breaking down the gelatin in the Jello, and it's causing it to melt. Okay, so I hope that makes sense to you. Just this idea that basically pineapple has bacteria that makes protein that'll break down Jello. It's simple as that, guys. So just remember, don't make Jello with pineapple, because you know what you're gonna get a pile of soup. It's not gonna work. So pineapple has bacteria that breaks down Jello. Think about it. Everything has bacteria. Nothing is exempt from it, even your favorite fruit, pineapple. Okay. So now I want to open up the floor to any questions you guys have. I want to hear what you guys have been thinking about. If you have any questions about your own food in your house or something like that, okay? So go ahead and feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question, and I'll try to answer it.
Hi, Ava. Did you hear that they recently went to a place in east of New Zealand but west of South America, and into this spot that doesn't get a lot of circulation on the planet, and they were able to find bacteria that was over 100 million years old, and using special petri dishes and scanning, I forget the scanning microscope they used, they were able to revive these over 100 million year old bacteria.
Isn't that super wild? Cool. That is really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, like your bacteria has been around forever. And now we've become so kind of hypersensitive to trying to control it, but it can be found everywhere and you can revive it.
Bacteria have been there for probably 3.8 billion years.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's been around for a long time. That was so exact. I'm so impressed that you know that number. That's awesome. So yeah, no, it's been around for a really long time, and it's not all bad. It's just a lot of times we focus on the bad. We focus on E. coli and problems like that, but it's definitely not all bad. So there's some great bacteria out there, like our yogurt bacteria. Any other questions, guys? Anyone else have a question? All right, let's see, maybe get one more question. Anybody, ask away. Anything you're wondering about your food. One more question. Come on, guys. One more. Anything. I just want to hear what you guys thought about this. Or you can tell me that you didn't like my experiment. Or you can tell me you like my experiment.
Why do people eat steak partially raw?
Yeah, why do people eat steak partially raw? That's a good question. So, maybe I'm actually, I like mine really well done, but some people do like it. You're right. They like it kind of juicy and red. And the reason is it's okay to eat it because you've probably killed off most of the bacteria it has. So remember, I was talking about how like raw meat, how, you know, bacteria likes it because it's nice and moist, and they like that environment. But when you do end up cooking your meat, even if it's a little bit, you were saying like how people eat it partially raw, partial is the key word there. It is cooked a little bit and it's cooked enough to get rid of that bacteria or most of the bacteria. But there are cases, you've probably seen the news or maybe you know somebody that like has gotten sick from eating undercooked meat, right? It's one of the warnings that you always get if you go to like a restaurant, it'll say, you know, warning, this, you know, undercooked meat can make you really sick. And that's just kind of protect themselves because they know even though they're cooking it and they're partially cooking it so that's not as moist and as wet and as warm as it was before, they partially cook it to kill off the bacteria, but they don't know if they're gonna kill it all off. So that's why you're better off getting your steak, you know, completely cooked so it's not pink anymore, because then you know that you're virtually getting no bacteria that's gonna make you sick. Whereas if you leave your meat slightly pink, there's always that risk that you can run. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. But thank you for asking that. That was a good question. Yeah, and if you guys, next time you go to a restaurant, I want you to look at the menu. If you ever look at like where the meats are, there'll probably be like a little note and says undercooked meat can make you very sick. Okay, if you read that thing, you'll understand now why. It's because of the bacteria that like to grow in that moist environment. All right. So guys, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed the experiment. I hope you guys kind of liked it. And if you want to try it at home, go for it. Make some Jello and put some pineapple in it, and you'll see what happens. It's not going to work. It's going to get really liquidy. So I hope you liked it, and I will see you guys next week. Okay? And please keep submitting questions. Okay? I love getting questions. Like the one today was great, and there's a couple of other ones too that are awesome that we've done so far. But keep submitting things you guys are wondering about. All right, and I'll see you next week.
And by the way, is this our last one?
No, this isn't our last one. We're gonna have one next week, and then maybe we're gonna have one more too. I'm not sure. I'm kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, we'll have to see what the school schedule says.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see exactly. I know. I was thinking about that, and maybe we could do something during the year too. Maybe not so every week, but something else, have monthly or something fun like that. So we'll see. All right, but I'll see.
That's awesome, Ava. Good for you.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining on.
Here's a kiss for you.
Bye.